Administration building in the boardroom. This meeting was posted according to government code, and we do have a quorum present this evening. We will continue on down our agenda. There are no audience invitations this evening. Okay. And we have no celebration this evening. We will continue that back in August. And so we will kick on to the good news. Does anyone have any good news to share about things they've seen or heard or read about the district in the past month?
I've been really excited about and seen a lot of posts about how a lot of the employees in the district are getting together and doing different things to prepare for the next school year. I've been at like soccer practices and different baseball practices and stuff, and I'll see teachers waiting for their kids, but they're not just waiting there, they've got their laptop out, they're writing tests for the next school year, and that kind of involved engagement and everything. Really excited to see.
Great. I ran into a teacher at a baseball game a couple weeks ago from the high school, and she ran right up to me and was so excited to tell me about her AP students and that where they scored and where they stood on their AP Spanish exam. And she was thrilled to let me know that we beat the state percentage of how many people scored 3 and above, as well as the global percentage of who scored 3 and above. So kudos to Mrs. Ramos and all of her students for that amazing result for the AP Spanish test.
As some of you may know, I do a Granny Seal tutorial session, and hats off to the little ones that I have. I have 2 incoming 5th graders. Let me tell you, y'all guys, they're doing a magnificent job. And the rest of them are pre-K and kinder. They're gonna be ready at the beginning of school. They'll be ready.
So I was looking up some statistics that I want to share with the group. We were just talking about and preparing for one of our upcoming events for growing ownership of our goals, our LSG goals, and came across a statistic. We had some great statistics on our senior class, which is 111 industry-based certifications by the senior class. And so I was just looking at some of the data. I want to look at even beyond the senior class, and I was able to find the report that last year alone, just last year, 195 different students received dual credit. That is not they took the class. They took the class and they passed it. 195 students last year alone, and I thought that was huge. And again, thank you for the recruiting efforts from everyone that has been worked so hard this year. We've got 8 credit faculty members. We've got 8 adjunct professors, which is very rare, and 5 more in the pipeline. I believe 1 more will be done this summer. And so looking at double-digit professors for our face-to-face school credit, which is so rare, just so far. That's great.
And I forgot to mention, Dr. called Dr. Mack and told him, I said, look, I need some talking points. They had invited me to the video alumni program on Saturday. And I said, tell me what you want me to say, or what should I say out in publicly with all of these people watching. They were really, really loving the numbers that you gave me. And I told them, no, that little card needs to be placed everywhere. Because even sitting on this board, I did not know that we have accomplished so much. When those numbers are in front of you and you see it, I mean, I am proud. I can pick up. Oh yeah, I did. No, I didn't. But they were very impressed with that. I just wish it had been more of the younger group, representing the younger group that was there. That could, really keep, those are the ones that didn't have there, pushing it, but they were moms and grandmothers of others. It was said they would be happy to go back and share, so thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am, and I have to give some credit. So I'm sitting there and I'm going through stuff, and I've got my list, and I shoot off a text message to our new high school principal And she's at the river, texting me, stats as well. So, and she didn't tell me that, so she sent everything. She's like, I got some more stuff after I get back from the river. So just really appreciate all of our work and all of our administrators, but, you know, we're all just, it's a feeding frenzy of good news, and that's awesome.
Yes, anybody have anything else? All right, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is LSG. Hello, sir, how are you?
Doing very well.
Good to see you this evening, Tony.
Very good.
How's your summer been?
Busy.
Came back from your cruise and hit the ground running.
Yeah, that's right, we sure did. So to start the meeting with, just looking at last month's meeting, you had 90 to 95 minutes and 50 minutes of that focused on student outcomes. So that's about 52.63% of the meeting. So you hit your goal, 50% or more. So congratulations on that. If you look at the in your folder, you have a copy of something called the time structure. It looks like this. And this kind of is it's something we use to capture stats on each meeting that we'll see again in the integrity of the meeting board evaluation. So you can see how you spend your time, it all breaks down. Also, last meeting, you had 6 members present, 1 was absent. We had 10 items on consent agenda. I can remember when BCISD would have to do 1 or 2. If any. So you've really gone to using the consent agenda well, and that speaks to the preparation that the board members should ahead of time. So that's excellent. We had only 2 other agenda items. Both of the goals that we discussed last month were on target, and all 6 of the goal targets were on target. So it's a stellar report from last week. Don't have any questions about that. Go on to the next point. And that is to kind of review some available STAR scores. So we're going to invite the high school principal to come down, and she has a fantastic report, and it's also got some history goals that she's going to be a part of that.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. So I think in your folders, you have a colored table, blue, green, and pink. This is only the last 3 years of the data. I've been keeping this data for 7 years. There was a year that we did not have data because of COVID, but when I started as an administrator at Bay High School, we were very focused on improving student outcomes, and some of that also came along with really my inaugural year at Bay High School was also the first year of T-tests. So the new teacher evaluation tool, which is going to be driven by student performance. So in order to get teachers to buy in, you kind of got to show them the data and show them how what they're doing has really an impact. Mr. Townsend worked with me that year for us to roll out some tier 1 strategies, very intentionally for teachers then to have those strategies modeled for their instructional team leaders. Prior to that, they were called department chairs. And they just really ordered the frogs for the department, and it was time to dissect frogs or something similar for the other departments. So the first year that you're looking at, the year of 2020 and 2021, we all know that was a really tough year. The blue numbers that are there are where we saw growth or something stayed the same. So during the year of COVID, in spite of COVID and virtual learning, with all of those things that we had implemented, we had 99 points of increase. That was including the deficits. So if there was anything that wasn't highlighted, we subtracted it from the increases. Then the next year, which was last school year prior to the one that we just finished, the 2021 and 2022, we had 295 points of increase. And then most recently in the school year, the pink that you will see, these are preliminary results. This is not published anywhere. This comes out of our Cambium testing system, where we have to actually log in and kind of do some of the work ourselves, where we have to add the approaches meet semesters, and we kind of have to manipulate multiple screens at the same time. There is also not any release data yet for the district and for the state, but it is available to us for comparison in there. And we are at or above region and state for all of our subject areas of BC High School. So we test at the high school English 1, English 2, biology, US history, and algebra. And just to kind of give you an idea, instead of you digging through each individual one of those pink numbers, because there's a lot of pink, which means there was a lot of increase. Overall, we had over 700 points of increase just between last school year and this school year. In English 1, we really try to look at English 1 to English 2 because academic growth is measured as part of our state accountability. And from English 1 previous school year to English 2 this school year, we actually made the 10% increase mark, which was phenomenal for our students. And that's really attributed to some consistency in the English department. We didn't have any change in staff. And the things that we really worked to try to implement with those teachers, then we saw the growth. It takes a little bit of time. Then junior high does not have a writing assessment. So it kind of sometimes takes 2 years. So that's one of the things for all students that we were really proud of. In addition to that, we had 2 specific populations that we focused on last year. We focused on our special education population, as well as our emerging bilingual population. And I'm sorry, there were 3, because then we have to focus on special education. Every subject saw increase in scores for special education. For our English language learners, we saw increase significantly, more than 10% in biology and US history. In our eco-disadvantaged student population for both English 2 and algebra, we also saw more than a 10% increase. And for our white students, we saw more than a 10% increase in English 1 and English 2. And they were our only population that had 100% passing for the biology STAR test. So the first time we had 100 in any of our sub-pops. That was the first 100 for any of those. And then we also, for our Hispanic students, so that was important for us to look at as well, go along with the ELLs, we saw more than a 10% increase in algebra. So just to kind of give you those overall highlights and what we anticipate for the official scores, we really wanted to share that, but also really to share where those successes are coming from. The basic high school instructional leadership team has not seen more than 2 members change in the last 5 years. So we have teachers who've been doing instructional practices with me when I was at the team, also through our Avid Professional Learning every summer. So they take turns getting to go to the Avid Professional Development. You mentioned AP, so some of them are also trained in advanced placement, and then some of them are also our dual credit teachers. So the things that they are doing to grow has really contributed. We also have specific time that we carve out every single week that our instructional leadership team meets when we review data and talk about how we are working towards that, each of the goals for each department. And then they lead their professional learning communities throughout the week. So they have a scheduled time each week that they meet with those. And this is going to be our second full year of every one of our testing. This is not new to elementary, but at high school, we've only been able to, for the last 2 years, have common planning time for all of our teachers that meet the same day. So all the biology teachers are out at the same time, all the US history, all of the English, and then all of our algebra teachers. And they're intentionally using that, what we would normally call a conference period. We've renamed it at Basic High School as planning time, which is listed on the master schedule that way. Because as it is designed, really the majority of the time should be spent thinking about how they're making impacts to student outcomes. And then we worked really hard this year on campus, curriculum-based assessments on our campus. So we've been using DMAC. That is the database where we keep all of our assessments that our teachers have made, as well as ones that are released to us from TEA, using those as like question banks to have consistently aligned unit assessments after each of the instructional units for all of those EOC courses. So even though teachers might have a way of doing their craft a little bit differently, they all do the same assessment and then the baseline for those comparisons. And we worked really hard this year to incorporate new question advice. So on our STAR test at the high school, the only one that does not have a writing component is algebra, but in US history and biology, they also had to do a writing component. And we saw students have significant increase in their performance to be able to do that, and we would go again to writing across them. So just a little highlight for you guys to see some of that. Any questions?
You mentioned the Avid Professional Development.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
So AVID is our program at high school advancement via individual determination. They have a summer institute every summer. So our teachers get to go for 3 days with their site team.
Okay.
It's kind of a select part of the site team, to be honest. We don't have the funds, of course, to send the entire site team. However, 2 summers ago, during COVID and in the summer after COVID, we brought a strand to Bay City High School.
Okay.
So we were actually able to train almost all of our instructional staff, especially those in the core areas, but also in our PTE classes and our fine arts department intentionally, so that we have strategies, we're all speaking the same language and using the same different types of bell ringers or collaboration approaches, so that the students are using it consistently, not just in an EOC class. But Ms. Brown, as our AVID district director, works really hard to try to grab the new teachers, maybe ones who have not ever been to training, with some of our experienced teachers. So they go to a community of practice. And in that community of practice, it might be content driven, or some of them this past summer, Mr. Driver, Ms. Brown, and Ms. Watson, who work with our early college students, attended a college prep strand to help students with study skills for that. And then we get time as a fight team in the afternoons to kind of say, okay, here's what we learned, how are we gonna put it into practice? So we've been doing that very consistently since I've been part of BCISD High School for the last 9 years. This summer, we had 10 high school teachers and 4 junior high teachers. So usually we have usually it's a little bit more balanced, but we usually get to take 15 or so of our staff members to that. And it's really beneficial for them to also collaborate with other teachers in other schools, some similar to them, some different from them. I had the opportunity this summer to actually teach a community of practice. And the last one that I did in San Antonio, there's an Arkansas school district who brought 298 participants. So it'd be awesome for Bay City ISD to be able to do something like that, but it's also very practical for us to bring a strand or community practice to us, so it's a little bit more affordable. But it's just a great way for us to get some of those practices, right? Really vertically aligned. So when you have junior high and high school teachers. Great.
Since we're talking about AVID, I think I may have done some talk.
Okay,
Tell me about AVID and how the kids in church.
so part of the AVID program really starts with the recruitment at the middle school level. Ms. Cummings has an AVID teacher, and we have 2 sections of 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. Then now we have 2 sections of each grade of local high school, but there used to only be 1 section. Those students were nominated by their teachers based on their academic performance, but being non-traditional students. So you might have a student that looks like they really should be in an honors class, but they've never been in an honors class. But because of their performance on STAR, or because of their work ethic, maybe they just shown an interest in going to college. Then our teachers work really hard to try to recruit those. Definitely try to vary the demographics for those students. And with early college, there's a lot of variation because they get so many chances in the draft. I call it the draft for early college. But based on the different demographics, whether they're at risk, whether they pass their TSI, some of those things that are indicators of your college readiness. And then those students in the AVID class, it's an elective that really is designed to help them build study skills for classes that are more advanced. They have tutors 2 days a week. When the tutors come in, they create a TRF, which is designed for them to have a tutorial focus for whatever their point of view was for the class that they're having most difficulty with. And then they're grouped based on their TRF content. So Jill might bring a TRF that's related to biology, but I might bring a TRF that's related to algebra. So then we're grouped. And then those tutors work on targeting students that need the support to help reteach some things and some of their peers. It's really awesome to see the peers that do the reteaching. But they are given, it's kind of an open opportunity, any student who is interested, but then anyone who is part of early college is required to be in AVID so that they have that support system.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you.
So we look forward to sharing the real results. Hopefully they'll only be better, but
So before she leaves, Dr. Mack, do you have any interpretation of the results that she shared that you'd like to give?
Well, I think it's very significant with the year we had and just the effort of staff and the purposefulness. We celebrated the CCMR results all along the way. But EOC is a big part of that. And everyone since going to 100% online testing with EOCs and all the change that happened, it's awesome to hear that Bay City High School outpaced the state and region in their scores. So that's something we always look for. And that is, there's a lot of quality school districts in the state of Texas, and to lead the way, also proud of our region, but to lead the way and be above those averages is certainly commendable. And I can only imagine when you have that first staff meeting, the good news that you're going to be able to roll out in front of that staff.
Our instructional team leaders will actually meet tomorrow evening, so they have committed to an evening meeting tomorrow because our schedules are so busy. But just to tell a little bit about the CC component, only 4 members of the instructional leadership team lead a team that has an impact on the EOC directly. All of the other 7 members of that team had other contributions through CCMR, which have really elevated these scores. So because they have used those strategies to help kids in career related, it really has their like, they want to get better in math because they want to get their NCCER certification in construction, and they don't realize they're also getting better in sport at the same time. So we talked a lot about how really valuable the other members of the campus are, in that they have 40% of the accountability through CCMR, but they're also contributing to this 40% too, because what they are doing in their classrooms is really elevating learning and style.
It's a great opportunity. Thank you for sharing, because now we're starting to see the nexus, if you will, between accountability on EOCs and academics and career preparation. And it's bringing everybody together.
Well, and to say something even about our special populations, because our EL staff and our special education staff are working so hard alongside those teachers, and we're seeing those results in their population. Thank y'all.
Thank you for your work, and thank you to your team.
Did you say teachers are working in the summer? I thought
They
were
all are
at night.
at night.
That's fantastic. Now I can tell you from working around the region that those are some really remarkable schools. They really are. So it's great for Bay City, but it's also compared to the region, it's very good. Very good. So I think what we'll do is we'll skip the next point, come back to it, and look at conflict of interest. In your folder there, I put a conflict of interest statement for you. I got this from my office and thought I would go put it on the different night. So just so as a part of Lone Star governance, you're supposed to update this annually and make sure that it's turn it into Danielle, and she'll make sure it's posted on the website. So if you have anything you do that could even be remotely related to conflict, I would suggest you fill one of these out and turn it in. Fill it out and turn it in, even if you don't. But let's just say that let's say the company you work for, you don't own the company. The company you work for does business with this. Indicate that. Because all it would take is somebody to question you on a vote that you made about something. And any kind of activity you have with the students of BCISD, since you're on the board, would be good to indicate that on conflict of interest statement, even though you're not using the district to recruit students or to work with students. Still, I think it's a good idea, even if it's like a little league team, something like that. I mean, just indicate anything that could be remotely seen as a conflict of interest. That's a good thing to put down on the form and report it. I'm sure Dr. Mack will be able to help you with that if you have any questions for him about that. But that's something that's, you notice that in the evaluation, you're supposed to redo that every couple of years. Okay, so
So you coach the leagues in soccer and softball and volleyball and all that, you got a list of all of them on there?
Dr. Mack, what would you advise them?
I think it's talking through it, it's a matter of just disclosing that you work with the kids in our school district. So I would, it's more open, honest transparency, just list that in case anything, wherever you could find yourself in a vote, such as agreement with youth leagues, etc. And then that would be full disclosure that, and then you would have that opportunity to abstain and that sort of stuff. It's just the way it happens.
But let me ask you, are any of the fields that you practice on or play games on property that belongs to the school district?
Yes.
I definitely indicate. Because there may be a vote that comes up about improving the quality of the field. And if it's one you have your coach on, somebody might think, well, he's doing it because we're his kid players, something like that. I really have absolutely nothing to do with that. So if you just indicate that those kind of things where you might have some, even any kind of remote potential item, keep it all out front, you know, and keep our hands open because we don't want to have any conflict. If you have any questions about that?
Is this a new one? Because my thing about, this CIS was only if you are working directly with the school system. And you are receiving gifts from the school district. But anything that does not really have anything, we are not getting it. Same logic words, has nothing to do with that. But if someone comes back and say, well, she's doing that, then it would not be a time at this meeting that I would be able to vote or do anything, because I'm ready to see them all over. So it does not, I mean, what I'm not understanding.
Let me give you an
the
example.
point.
If you, do you do Facebook? Okay, so do you talk about tutoring at all on Facebook?
Yes,
Okay, how many people share Facebook with you? How many followers do you have? And so they're probably all connected to the BCISD Facebook page too, right? So when you put something up, then everybody that's associated with BCISD can see that. Somebody could suspect that you're using the district to promote this. I mean, no, you're not. But we don't want you to be at risk. So that's why we have a disclosure statement. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's just you're indicating any kind of connection that you want to make, just as a protection. And I would say any kind of specific questions that you have, I'm thinking Dr. Mack, let Dr. Mack get that. He needs to get an opinion from the school legal counsel to do that. But I just wanted to present it because it is a part of Lone Star governance. I think the proper place to bring up this question is the doctor.
Sure, we can entertain individual questions and I'll get a pretty quick response because this is very, very common. The other side of it that I've seen this more is when you don't have that disclosure. It comes up, why didn't it disclose it? Then it appears to be, you know, it's just a matter of putting everything you can think of out there and saying, you know, disclosure and that sort of approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there was a superintendent a few years ago in our region that lost his job. That's over something he failed to disclose. And there was no intention on his part, but after the fact, when people started looking into it, there could have been some impropriety. So it's just a way to protect yourself and protect the district. But again, Mr. Robinson, I would say any kind of specific question, take those up with Dr. Mack. He needs to get a legal, he'll make sure you clarify that.
So this is not new tonight.
No,
You can bring it back next meeting and, yeah, so this isn't something that needs to be decided tonight.
sure. It's just an aspect of open government, trying to make sure that we can completely open and honest and all of it. That's reason. Okay, so the next item, let's do the board evaluation. And then we'll come back and have a discussion about the next 5-year period. And I did the homework on this for you, and I hope you did too. We sent it to you ahead of time so you could look it over. And I've got the scores and the last few times. Okay, so when we look at the first area, just as a reminder, the way we read this is from left to right. And you can see the points increase in there. The highest amount of points you can get for one area after the slope will be 50. It drops down from there to say 12, 9, even 5. And so the ones that have the most points attached to them, research shows that those are the most important. So this first area is vision and goals 1. The board has adopted the student outcome. So where do you think you land on this?
The 12.
Okay. Needs focus.
so why don't you say?
Well, and there was some discussion that I made the last time we talked about the board ownership, that has everyone committed the vision student goals to memory, and know the current status of each student outcome goal. So I think we know the current because we go over them so much. I think the broad community ownership, and I think the last time we had this discussion, we went back and forth of LSG specific. I do think our community ownership of what we're doing in our district and the good things that are happening are becoming very wide. The people are really starting to understand what is happening and the good things that are coming out of this district and that we're doing with students in their education. Has everyone committed goals to memory? I have not. I know them, but I have not committed them to them. So that is why I said no to 13.
And one of the things we're gonna do next year, and we're gonna come back to that in our meeting tonight, we're planning forward for the next 5-year period, is we're gonna be more intentional about community engagement. So it's interesting that we had that conversation, about putting it in the monitoring calendar and having some events that we pre-planned and board members sign up ahead of time for supporting that. Because on Sunday, I got an email from the person at TDA that oversees one of our a whole set of documents and a PowerPoint and everything on how to get that done. We hadn't even talked about it. I hadn't even talked to her about it. But other people around the state are talking about the same thing. How do you improve community engagement, broad community ownership of your district goal? And so we've got a system now that we can implement over the next year that's pretty baked out. I'm really impressed with it. So we'll be introducing that to you in September. And we'll get your input on it as well. So does everybody agree that where it meets focus? Well, okay. Then we go on to the next period, and that is vision goals 2. The board has adopted goal progress measures aligned to each student outcome goal. Where did you score yourself on that?
That we are on the same page when it comes to all of them. We do, you know, I want to go taking that and we say, oh, we're still on that because that one word. I would say we are close. I would say 12.
What, each focus?
Mhm.
Okay. Does everybody agree on that? Each focus? Okay. And then we go to the next period. That is vision goal 3. The board has adopted strengths. Where do you score yourself in?
I could say, again, because we do focus on preparing them and they present us the outcomes. And I think we've done really well with this.
So you think it's a 9 for each focus? We don't listen.
I do.
Does everybody agree on that?
And I'll add a comment to that, Tony. I know one of the constraints, at least for me, that's really the point that this process is helping you to remain focused on is the attendance piece. And so we had a couple of days where, various reasons, we had very low attendance rate. We explored that process. I personally have never done that process before now. So we explored the whole process to apply for a waiver for those exceptional situations. The board came in on very short notice because of deadlines, not short notice because of anything, but if we're going to make a push for this and make a concerted effort on this constraint that we're committed to attendance, we're going to come in, we're going to have the meeting. And I can report to the board that that waiver has recently been approved. So due to all that work and coming together, it focuses our efforts, and that waiver was approved. And they are, as some of you know, they bounced it back immediately, and then we came right back with some additional data. Mr. Townsend, our Laura and Peems instrumental in that, but it was a lot of folks pulling data, compiling data. It was a great presentation. we're approved. So I think that would be my contribution to constraints, that we're being very purposeful in watching every day at home.
And that's part of the importance of these reports to the board, staying focused on student outcomes, what the board can do to help do that. And, you know, it makes a difference when you're coming in reporting to the public, how the district's doing. So let's go on to the next one, the vision and goals for the board has adopted superintendent constraint progress measures. And where do you think you score on that?
And it's right, but anyway, we segue.
That was good fun.
That's good.
It was both these focus, okay. Everybody agree with that? We focus there, okay. Going over to the next area, this is progress and accountability. The board invests at least half of its time to improving student outcomes. And so I did a little math on this. In April, you spent 69.17% of your time on student outcomes. In May, you had an off month, it was 25.86, and then in June it was 52.63. So when you do the math and you add it up, I'm sorry, it comes up to 49.22. So you're a little below. Now we gotta be honest, right? So that you're with Rami's. I did, and that is growth. That is growth. That is really good growth. So it's just not that it was again, but that's, you know, that's what we're shooting for.
So we're at weeks, we're at 12.
But hey, yeah, so we got a 8 focus.
It's better than where we have been.
Yes.
We're making progress.
Yes, definitely. So going over to progress and accountability. This is progress and accountability to one evaluation, not interfere with progress toward improving student outcomes. Well, you know, you can't get master's focus because you do not consider superintendent performance as indistinguishable from system performance by evaluating the superintendent on only the results of student outcomes and constraint. That's a outcome decision you made because you feel like there's more important things besides just student outcomes that Dr. Rackets to evaluate. Actually, we have 10 districts that are doing this, all 10 that are just accepting the fact that they're not meeting master's focus. So where do you think you land? You're one of the few districts I have that's actually done a staff extractor. So she's done that a couple of times. So where do you think you land on this?
Go back and you said the reason it would not make masters is because the what?
The last bullet point.
Yeah, your superintendent evaluation system includes other things besides student outcomes and constraints.
Gotcha.
Other areas you feel like he needs to be evaluated, which I completely agree. When I was superintendent, I would have wanted to have a full evaluation on everything, every aspect of my job.
And so why does TEA have that in there?
They feel like that's the most critical element of the superintendent's job. And I think what they're trying to do is overwhelming. They're trying to put that as the most important thing. And there's other people in the district that take care of the finance and maintenance and the personnel and things like that, and the technology. And his job is student outcomes. That's what schools are here for. I'm sure that why they're pushing it. Just go down the road about 60 miles to Houston, IFD. It's a good example of why they're pushing it.
Well, and that LSG was created for districts that TEA was coming in, and it's a whole thing. LSG, to be on the board of the district that TEA is coming in, you have to take this course and they evaluate you and they pick you according to how you did in this course. I mean, it was a whole.
For Houston, IFD.
For Houston, IFD.
Some of my peers, there's 28 of us coaching in the state of Texas. And there were several of my peers from San Antonio that got selected to go and do the workshop. There was over 300 people that signed up to be on that board. So they had to vet them and somehow decide. And what they did is they put them through a 2-day LSG workshop like y'all went through. And they had people watching, and then some coaches like myself that actually administered the course. So It was interesting. I got to talk to a couple of the guys who did that. I think they love the process and they felt like it really helped them select. We'll see what happens. Yeah, you're right. And it started out, the LSG started out for schools that were low performing and they were told they had to do it. But in the 10 districts in Region 3 that are doing Lone-Star governance right now have not, they're not doing it because they had to, they elected to. And you're included. Because you see the value in it and you want to improve student outcomes. So that's how you got it.
One of the biggest thing, really, when I was coming in and knowing that our district had committed to that it was not a requirement, though, this extra added focus on student outcomes was something that the board elected to do on their own. I thought that was a huge commitment. And I can tell you personally, as far as the evaluation process, I very much appreciate the opportunity for the evaluation process to talk about facilities and the importance, because it does impact student outcomes. The budget, we've been talking about the 3 B's, the budget, behavior, and everything else. There's a lot of things that come together. So I really personally appreciate the global eclectic evaluation and, just working with everybody that fits under that umbrella.
Absolutely. Very good. So on progress and accountability 2, where do you think you score? Sorry. 4, yeah, okay, so, okay, very good. And so then we go on to systems and processes, and I did a little math on this one. You'll notice when you get over to the needs focus column, it says, item number 3, the average of 5 other topics per meeting on the agenda. So I went through your agendas for the last 3 months. In April, you had 4 other items, other than what's on the consent agenda. And other items would be things that involve discussion and a vote. Not just like, celebrations of excellence or the opening ceremonies, that's not counting. It's things that involve discussion and a vote. So you had 4 in April, you had 6 in May, and you had 2 in June. So that was an average of 4. So you're under that 5 limit. That's just something that research shows the board that, it's in the agenda. And we put things on the agenda that really need to be on there. And handle like that seems to keep the board focused on students. When you look in the master's focus column where it says you spend an average, your average hours of meeting or 2 hours per meeting, and the average hours or the average topics, it says in column 4 or column master's focus 15 points. Says you have to be at 3. Well, you're at 4, so you can't master. But just as an example for your time on in your meetings, in April, we had a 133-minute meeting. In May, you had a 116-minute meeting. In June, you had a 95-minute meeting. So that means your average for the last 3 months is 1.4 hours. So you were under the mark, the 2-hour mark for master's focus, but you were over on other items on the agenda. So then where do you think you score?
What did you say? He's without experience.
What was that one? Yeah, it means focus, right? Okay, everybody agree with that?
What was the piece on the other topics? I didn't quite follow.
Okay, you averaged 4 other topics. So when you look at the needs focus column, it says you 5 qualify for needs focus, 5 or less. You did that, but if you look at the master's focus at item number 2 or item number 3, sorry, you have to get down to 3 items to get master's focus.
And how do you define those other topics? Just so
It's topics that involve discussion and a vote. So like tonight, I looked at tonight's agenda and it looks like to me you had already looked at that. Looks like you've got 1 or 2, one is good, one's still.
Yeah, the love the employee handbook and hire.
That's one of almost every single meeting.
Yeah.
And you know what, there's times that you're gonna have, like when you do a construction project or you got maybe a 313 you're looking at, somebody wants to put in a solar farm. I mean, you're gonna have more items on the agenda, right? That's what's gonna happen. So you just they hit it.
But when you're saying other, you're saying items of business that are living outside of the consent agenda, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
got it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it wouldn't involve things that would be like a hearing. Like if your business manager is gonna have a budget here, that's a separate meeting. That's not part of it. Thank you. Everything's closed. Okay, so now going on to, the advocacy engagement, the board promotes division. I had some questions on this one. Of course, looking at master's focus, you haven't, I don't believe you had, an activity where students have been included at least on one start governance training for two-way communication. I don't believe we have.
What do you call two-way communication? Is that just me talking to a student or a group of students about one-star governance? They ask questions.
There's a couple of, yeah, a couple of board members having a presentation where students are invited to participate as well.
There's been a couple of board members.
Generally, it is. Generally, it is. It's not an informal discussion.
Well, no,
Where the students are
we get
presenting
a
with us.
golf tournament talking
No,
about.
it's where you're doing, it's where you're doing either a training or some two-way communication. It'll be, like I said, once a year. And so what we're gonna do about, when we're being intentional, you know, with next year's planning, we're gonna plan these things ahead of time. And make sure we got the right people in the audience, and make sure, because this is research based, if we follow through with this, then I have a feeling you guys are gonna get to the point where you've got broad community ownership because I feel it. And if we get more intentional with our community engagement, I think
The thing in San Antonio, it was a group of kids ranging from seventh grade, seventh through 12 that led that meeting with us. And it was so awesome, and it was these kids that were there from all walks. And the thing that was so neat, they didn't know one another. You know, yes, we're in the same grade, but they did not know them because of a different, organization. But they actually led at that meeting, that presentation. It was awesome. So I still give it.
that is good. Also, I have some questions that are preparing about this. Where is the two-way communication system for the board members at least once a year? Listen for and discuss the vision and values of the students. This would be like a public meeting that you would focus on your vision, your values, your goals, your constraints, invite the public to come, and it's two-way conversation with them. And I don't believe you done that. Hey, I'm close to some forums where there's more like a one-way presentation.
We had a couple at the beginning of last year where we had some good discussion and dialogue back and forth. I remember Rotary we did, Lions Club, we had some good comments and good things. Even at Lenny Roberts, if there, not meet the teacher, but it was maybe parent night. I don't remember what it was called. We did a presentation and had some great conversation. You were there, right? And James, I think, was there. So I think we've done some of it.
But then we did one at, too.
Yeah, we did one at Tenny Homes. We had more dialogue from parents at the Lenny Roberts than at Tenny Homes, but we're definitely moving in the right direction. But we have had some dialogue with community members back and forth.
We have another one coming up,
Yeah.
and my question is for the two-way. And all of these presentations, for the most part, yes, there's a slide on Q&A. And most of the time they take us up on that, and I expect that next week, hopefully we'll execute the biggest one that I've ever done, that Q&A time to learn more about the goals, what they need, will be a big part of it. I'll let Lee Arliss and audience correct me if I missed that, but we're really working hard. The original plan was this, the original plan was to publish a year in review celebration, which includes all the information of what we do, but also to highlight specific examples from CCMR to athletic and everything. This is comprehensive. So this was a digital, began with Victoria Bragg putting together a digital copy of this. We're going to make it into a hard copy. Our our goal is to have that on the coffee table of every business and community leaders, organization, so that they have that showing not only those, but what that looks like. What does CCMR look like? You know, we've got an aerial photo of, you know, well over 100 students who earned an IBC this year. And so that was part of it. And then inviting the community, which we're planning for that to be next Thursday, and get, at first we said, you know, we got some business we need to take care of. We're gonna have the high school. We're gonna invite the community. We're gonna give them free advertising in our publication. So not only do we want it on your coffee table, but if you show up and you join us in this partnership to promote greater ownership of the goals, we're gonna give you the free advertising in the back of our publication. Well, the discussion then turned, and it's going to be new to some of you in here. The discussion then turned, we were at a community event, many board members were there, and the chamber CEO, Mitch Thain, said, you know what, I've got something else huge that night. We've got the comptroller coming that night, and so we're trying to work through that. We've got a lot of scheduling things we got to get to, but what I really want you to know was the original idea, but we'll get the date, we'll get it all ironed out, but not only is it sometimes difficult to get everybody there, when you go for that community ownership, it's so hard to get a good night and a good schedule. So if we're not able to get that finalized, we'll let you know. But there's a lot of planning. So
That sounds good.
the year in review is already done and ready to go. And we're just looking to try to get a time, and I'm so sorry it's so difficult, but to find out Saturday that there was another event planned. We'll work through it with you all, but we're committed to doing this. We know it's difficult to get everyone together. I'm saying we want this for the community, not just a team of 8 here, but we're really going to search hard for a date that we can get to those people to hear about all the great things happening and share that publicly. Yeah, it's probably, we haven't finalized the date, and I know we haven't finalized the date. It has not been finalized. We found out Saturday that there was a conflict, and so we're trying to work through that. That's probably, was that the gist of it?
Try to think of ways that you can answer two-way part of the communication. Where, you know, yes, you're giving them the great things that are happening in the district, but you want to hear from them. What do you want out of your school? What are we doing that? What do we do better? What are we not doing that you would like for us to do? And further consider.
Right.
And give an ample amount of time for them to give feedback to the district. And really listen thoughtfully and take notes and see where they go. Even if there's a smaller group that showed up, you could even have different topics on different tables. You could collect information from the part that would help you a lot. Just getting things together like that.
And the latest information is that it's still in play. There was confusion on dates. So we may be posting that next week. But either way, we're sitting on the goal. We just need to say we're starting. So it's good to know that is not a constraint.
Yeah, well, and I think the big picture is we really just want people in the community to know, and we want to know what they need as business owners, so we can ensure that we are preparing people that come out of Bay City Independent School District to launch straight into being people that they are able to hire in their work.
Absolutely.
So I think that is the bigger target, and a huge thank you to Dr. Mack and his team. And I know Lee and Victoria and so many have worked tirelessly on this, but I do think that is what is going to come from it, is people in the business area, community from Bay City will look at it and say, oh, this is what I need. Let's go back and tell Bay City, hey, can we gear something towards this? And then we can come up with that.
Bay City IC is really actually interested in helping me do better in my business. Help me, listening to me about what I need. And that's kind of where you have to kind of balance that out as much as you can. And that's why I like that open forum, like a public meeting.
Right.
It's just, you know, here, we're gonna give you some things that we're doing, that we're proud of, but we want to hear from you. What we need, what we're not getting, what you want. Or where you are, if you want to put something in, something, be very satisfied with what you're getting, like to do that too. You know. So on this kind of engagement, where do we think we
So I
score?
do think Priscilla has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, that's okay. I'm just kidding. No, I'm joking, Tony. But if you notice that on all of this, it's only one bullet that knocks us off. It's just one bullet. So I want to ask, when we talk about the team of 8, if 4 of us are at a meeting, would that not be enough, or we have to have all 8 in present?
The state says that when, you get credit for a team of 8 training when all 8 are there.
So,
You're really not supposed to get credit for a team of 8, unless all 8 are there. Now, other trainings that we do, ISO training, Robert's rules, roles and responsibilities that aren't set up as a team building, then, whoever comes gets credit. When you go to TASB or you go to SLI, you go to a workshop, maybe not everybody's there, but you get the number of, that's your credit. But the whole team gets credit, everyone's credit. That's how it is. Okay, so where do we stand, where do we score on, advocacy and engagement?
well, according to this, we don't need, it's not me focus out. I mean, not one of these out of here, we are. Right? And it's not the whole team, so we will be at 0.
I don't know if the whole team has to be there for these.
Yeah.
Is that,
No, that's not.
I don't think this has to, I don't think. Is that,
Yeah, I mean, if you feel like we're looking at preparing to focus, the board has a 2-way communication system in place where board members at least once a year listen for and discuss the vision and values of their students, and listen for and discuss the vision and values of their staff. Do you feel like you've done that?
Yeah, we have done that.
When
I
did we
would say,
do
let
that?
me stop talking. I would say that we have, because the 2-way communication, as I said, is like my talking to someone out in the community, they giving me feedback. But if all of us are not here, or 4 of us are not here, present, 5 and 8, then it kicks us out. The 2-way communication can be between the superintendent and I and the president of the board. It still knocks us out because we are not meeting and it's not a team of 8. So you say a team of 8 means 8 of us.
Well, I think I probably confused you when I was talking about the team of 8,
Okay.
because that's board training. This is 2-way communication between you and the public,
Okay.
you and the students.
Okay.
So if you hosted an event, I have a clarification.
I mean, does 2-way communication have to be an event, or can it just be you making your phone number available for whoever wants to have that conversation for staff or whoever?
that's all 8. But I think it's or is it a forum? That's where I think the confusion is. Is it individual conversation or is it a forum that's needed?
Yeah, I have a document.
I don't think it's a team of 8. Because we've never done anything with a team of 8. It is a public meeting like that, where it's a 2-way communication strictly on LSG. But yeah,
Okay, that's in advocacy.
yes, sir. Yeah, I put, yeah.
Yeah, if you felt like you had students that you were actually working, it's, let me just give you the clarification. So at least once a year, board continues to engage with the 2-way communication around values. This also helps educate the community around board work.
We've done that.
Yeah, trustees always do, this is not an opportunity. Coach can support the development of script and subject to ensure the same message is put in the file. So yeah, it sounds like y'all have done that.
The only thing, we put up all these signs so that we can move up to meets. We kept on getting kicked out by the displays and keeps updating these guys, targets lost. Right, so we put up signs. So now we should be at 9, we don't have 10.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Everybody else agree?
Yes.
Okay, so we're at 9. Okay, looking at the final area, and this is Timothy and Brook. Looking at, get over to needs focus, and it's actually approach to focus and needs focus involves your attendance as board members. And April, May, and June, your average was 90.5%. So you had one meeting where all 7 were present, and then 2 meetings where you had 6 present and 1 went. So it's 90.5%. That's what it was. So you were over the 80%. That's required for the focus.
What takes us out of mess?
Here's what I'm
Mess.
looking at needs focus, the last bullet point on needs focus, where it says rather than the superintendent, you led the completion of Lone Star governance tasks. So I know James has done that. Some of the others of you have done that for the public, right? Okay, yes. Okay. So you qualify for needs focus at least. Looking at masters, what would hold you back from masters? Is that okay?
I don't think so.
We're,
But all board members have completed Lone Star governance. Agree that all board members have adhered to adopted board constraints during the previous 3 months. And agree that no board member has given operational advice or instructions to staff members during the previous 3 months.
let's see.
So the way I counted up, we scored 84. Does that count right?
Moving on up.
That's good. All right, very good, excellent. I think that is the last score you got was 78. Time before that was 79, and the time before that was 70. So you're definitely improving, and you plan to be more intentional next year. To be even more pleased. So congratulations on that. Good. Okay, the next area that we wanted to do, we just wanted to have kind of I don't want to go long on this, but I did want to have a little discussion about our planning going forward, because we do have a date set up with the leadership team to draft the new template and the new monitoring report, because we are at the end of the 5-year cycle. HB pre-K started just at the 5th year. And so we now are going to have to re-up for a 5-year period. So you're going to have early childhood reading, early childhood math, CCNY. Those goals you have to have by law. You still have goal 4 and goal 5. What we've been doing is 6th grade math, 8th grade math. Goal 4 was 6th grade math. Goal 5 was 8th grade math. And so I'd like to hear from the leadership team, including the principals. Is that something like right now? I know we don't have the data right. So that's a real. I talked to TEA the other day and kind of explained my frustration over that. In my job, here we are planning the busiest time of the year in August. And we're not going to be able to do any monitoring in September. We're going to actually present a draft of the next 5-year plan in September at the board meeting. New goals, the goal progress measures, the constraints, new monitoring calendar. And so we wanted to have a discussion tonight about, so the leadership team can talk about what they see as a potential for those goals.
I just want, we had a met with principals this week, and we had a discussion in here. One of the things that isn't currently a goal in 7th grade. One of the unique things about 7th grade, not that that's going to be a goal, but I want to mention it. I think it's been a constraint to do progress monitoring at the middle school levels, because your elementary levels have that data from the screeners that go beginning, middle, and end of year. Now, just as a conversation point, of course, Rosie's welcome to jump in here. I go to 7th grade on the literacy side. There are requirements for that same screening. And so that, we didn't have seventh grade in this one. If the data shows that the team, I want to point out that progress measure piece for the first 3 goals also fits with seventh grade literacy, but I don't know if you have a comment on that, Rosie, or what. I know we're a long ways, we've got to have a planning meeting and look at data.
I think one thing with having that as a goal, you would see the progress from elementary through middle school. And I think it would be more apples to apples, because if we're doing a progress measuring beginning, middle, and end of year, seeing where they are with that, the screeners, I think that would give more of a true picture of what is going on in the literacy center.
In the same format, so it really would fit with what we're already doing. So we'll look at the data, but I mean, we have that, all the principals from there, and we have the discussion. I guess there's another opportunity to see where we are at that level. We take them, all the way through elementary, now to take another peek at seventh grade, and see how that translates. It's also similar. It also fits in line when you get to this, the CCMR, it's at high school, it's kind of a finished product. So again, that would be the same exact format, apples to apples, just like those you said. And
So it's one area of, what curriculum area are you talking about?
literacy in seventh grade, same thing as the required screeners.
ELA,
We do, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
and that would be a seventh grade ELA?
Yes, that's a state.
And you're thinking about for a goal 4 instead of 6th grade now?
Potentially, and again, I would, Rosie's great with data, and so just because we talked about it, maybe yesterday or the day before, I just wanted to bring that up, that we just naturally talked about it, it's kind of fitting in the format.
Yeah, this is the only district that I have that has like goal 4, goal 5, and goal junior high math. I mean, you could take one of those goals, and make it 8th grade math, and then for your goal progress measure, 6, 7, and 8. And then have another goal for another area, like you're talking about. That's up to y'all. That's why we wanted to have this conversation that you could be involved in.
But I think that's another case in point of, I mean, this is something that isn't just out there, let's get ready for a board meeting. I mean, it's every time something hits us, it's like, well, listen, time out, that's the same requirement that we have in K through 5. That's something we should consider.
Well, and I think if it gives us a better picture of where we're headed, and we're able to check points, because that's what we're using, that's what the data is used for, is to check points to ensure we're hitting the goal. So if we're gonna create it, we're not grouping, we're not finding a dipstick for that specific thing, then let's figure out how to dipstick that specific thing, so we can make sure we're testing along the way instead of just.
And I thought of just another rationale that bleeds into the high school, and I know from the most difficult test in high school since the inception of this STAR program is ELA 1. Such freshman year. So we're currently not looking at ELA in the middle, and we know that in high school, statewide, it's not a BCISD thing or a BCH, Bay City High School thing. It is across the state the most difficult test. Students pass ELA 2 at a higher rate than ELA 1. So that would be a natural bridge to see where we at in 7th grade as we prepare for the most difficult EOC advice. Just a thought.
So basically, if we did that, we would be shifting away from junior high math. We wouldn't have a goal for junior high math. We would have one for ELA for some area 7th grade, say. And then we would look at an EOC goal for the high school for English 1.
Well, do we need to have an EOC in a 7th grade, or can we track 7th grade to know where we're headed when we get there, or we're tracking EOC and goal progress measure down, where we're tracking it to where we're still able to have a goal to track the math? If math is an area that y'all feel still needs to be a deep dive into,
Oh, yeah.
since we're doing a 6 and an 8, could we not do an EOC English 1 and bump down 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade, and then a math 8th grade, so then you're bumping down 7th grade, 6th grade, 5th grade for your goal progress, something of that, so where you're stair stepping it back.
Yeah, that's excellent.
there's a lot of discussion here, thank you for that, because we gotta think about how the goal is written. The first three are written from a very global level of HB3, where, let's talk elementary assessment, state assessment. So state assessment, it's all about what's the finish line, third grade math and literacy. However, our GPMs, our strategies lead into that, our progress measures from kindergarten up. So if we had an EOC, there's two ways to go about the EOC, there's two ways. We could have an EOC goal of, be difficult. I'm thinking, and Rosie will know a lot about this, Rosie and I talk a lot about the difficulty in the progress monitoring. So let's say you named the first scenario, you named it EOC 1 as your goal, but your progress measure was the 7th grade, because it's the same thing with it's the exact same scenario with math and reading for 3rd grade. Currently our goals, those goals leading up to 3rd grade are K all the way. So if we could have a goal, because it is the most difficult test, so we could give you that in, begin with the end of mind with the EOC score, and then we could really probe A through 7 with a little jump over 6 there, but almost with complete fidelity, K through 7, where we haven't been looking, and it just seems like a natural place to go, and that it is the most difficult test in high school.
Those are excellent, this is an excellent discussion. We were talking before the meeting about the elephant in the room is what assessment do we use? Because what we would love to have is an assessment that would be reflective of growth, that tells us how far we've come and we're on track to be successful in the test. And then it was built into a system that it would break it down by sub-pop, so you didn't have to do that manually, like y'all had to do in the past. So if we could look at trying to find an assessment that would do that, and then
And they have one. Correct, didn't we discuss on that list for that 7th grade that we had an assessment in place, or?
For 7th grade, it is a screener, so on the ELA side, yes, it'd be more apples to apples on the ELA side. On the math side, the concern is you've got CBAs, interims, and benchmarks. So the last few years, okay, we start with CBAs, then it get toward the end of the year, we're looking at benchmarks. And you can't see where the progression goes within that 1 grade level for that year. If we do CBAs, then okay, if we stick with CBAs, then when we get the benchmark data, people want to know about the benchmark information, that data. So it's not going to be in line with what we've been doing all year. That's the issue with the math side of it. So what will we use to progress measure throughout the year on the math side and be consistent with that and say, this is what we're going to use.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Rosie, we just to make sure we're all on the same page, when we talk about all elementary, those screeners that we keep mentioning, the screeners are literally a mandate to progress monitor 3 times a year.
Correct.
And we're saying that we do have a test already in 7th grade that does the exact same thing and is a state requirement. It's not an HB3 board mandated goal, but it is a state required progress monitoring piece. So it seems to fit very well.
So when you say CBA, I know it's at the end of a unit.
End of a unit, generally, it falls towards the end of the 6 weeks and it's a curriculum-based assessment. So it's been created either by instructional coaches or the department heads or the department for what they've taught over that past 6 weeks.
Right,
So then
and that's what we've been using
that's generally we started the year off with this past year. But
in our
then,
LSG, correct?
yes,
Okay, which in my head, I think, why are we using an end of 6 weeks curriculum test to jump to then get to the end of the year, but that doesn't tell us the growth, or that doesn't show where if the data, I don't know, if the data is useful if we were to have some sort of something in the I don't know.
CBAs will basically show, it's not going to show growth, it's going to show their mastery of what they have been taught that 6 weeks. And then the next 6 weeks will be their mastery over that. So you won't see a progression of growth.
Correct.
So that's what I was showing each time. We did
Yeah.
not do beginning, middle, and end of the year benchmarks this past year, so you had nothing to see where they started in the beginning to where they were at the end.
Correct.
So that's where it got to be like CBA,
Super well.
then we had the interims, and then we had the one benchmark at the end of the year. So it became like, okay, yeah, that was beginning. this is where we're at.
So something to share at the secondary level when that comes up at high school. So we have been consistent 6 through 12 at utilizing the CBAs, because when we worked with our instructional leadership teams and with our district facilitators, instructional coaches, academic deans, we're working with teachers having fidelity with implementation of the curriculum, because the curriculum is designed to help students be successful on the end of course exam. So a little bit different perspective where they're building skills at an elementary level. They're held responsible at the secondary level for the content that does have to be taught. And this, the way it's being assessed is a little bit different, because they're having to apply the learning, not just regurgitate knowledge that they have. So when we've done the curriculum-based assessments, we've had much more success with the data-informed conversations that we have with our teachers. And I'll give you an example. If you go back to the table that I shared with you, when we looked at what we were doing differently in all content areas, this is not to point out any specific content areas doing anything wrong here, there, or the other. But when we went back to say, why did we have growth in every content area except, and that year, the exception was biology. So language arts had changed their scope and sequence to align it and change their curriculum-based assessments. US history had done that. Algebra had done that. We were very intentional about using regional consultants that really worked with us as well to kind of compare things, but also help us design those questions and use release test questions. Biology curriculum was what we had been doing since the 80s. And they had been having success, so we hadn't messed with it. But then when we had done all the other things with the other subjects, the only thing we didn't do was stick true to the fidelity of the curriculum. So the curriculum-based assessments made sure every biology teacher was teaching the same thing, because they were all going to be taking the same assessment. It was heartbreaking for a lot of teachers to know. We called them boulders, rocks, and butterflies. The things that you were teaching, you had to sort them out. The boulders are going to be assessed. The rocks are going to be part of the assessment because they're contributing in their big things. The butterflies were everything that people love that they've always taught, but we're not on the assessment anymore. So something really important to remember is that content is being assessed. And if at certain times during the school year, there's other interruptions at high school, there's extracurricular activities, but that's when we teach the biggest part of what's being assessed, and we're not doing it with fidelity and checking for students' understanding, and then not spiraling that content back in at other times, then we're not having students retain what they need all the way at the end of the school year when they finally take the assessment. So our curriculum-based assessments at the high school, we worked very hard on, especially over the last 3 years, to make sure that they had the rigor to reflect what was going to be on the assessments, but also consistency in being true to the curriculum. So a little bit different because of the way that you're building skills at an elementary level. At the high school, the content is very important. And we have found that honestly, that's where the impact has come. If we were having to shut down the school to do a benchmark, just for y'all to know, we were doing it for the sake of saying that we had done a benchmark. And most of the time, 50% of what we were testing students on, they had never been taught. So they weren't going to be successful on it because we had not covered the curriculum. But we were having to give the full assessment at the beginning, middle, and end of the year to have a comparison point, which really was not valid for the students. So it took out instructional time, and it was really not as, I mean, we picked the questions to kind of give them an assessment for how they did on what they had been taught. But the overall number in DMAC did not look pretty to teachers, and it was very discouraging for them to see student performance and for students to see their performance and feel like that they were defeated when they've been working all year long. Now we assess them on what they have been taught and continue to add additional things so that it's bigger chunks throughout the year. So when we get to the end of the year, probably the closest thing that they do when we are doing data conversations is they look at the semester exam, and then they look at the 4th 6 weeks assessment and look where students are. And then they do a 10-day review, but that is truly based on going back to the CBAs to see the things that are going to be most frequently tested that students did least, they performed the least in. So,
And the point she's bringing out about the spiraling, I think that's the thing that can really help us to get an assessment that will be reflected if we're really growing.
Right.
And so hopefully we can, this is a good discussion. And hopefully when we come back in September, we'll have a draft for you to approve. We lay this out, you feel comfortable. Now, the district decides to use an interim assessment that TEA produces. When we present that data to you, you just need to understand that what they're doing with CBAs and what they're doing looking at that, it's like apples and oranges. You cannot, don't try to compare it. And it's not going to be necessarily reflective.
Tony, on the agenda, we have the first reading of the age local, which is a comprehensive curriculum management plan. There are certain things in education, there's a lot of things that everybody debates. There are certain things that nobody debates, and the lesson cycle is a part of that. And we talk about spiral, we talk about remediation, coming back to those concepts that are missed. Another thing is the content common assessments. You have multiple biology teachers in some cases, multiple ELA teachers. You want to make sure that every child that walks through our doors has a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And the way to guarantee that is to progress monitor in that way. And that way to say, we just covered this. We're going to have a rollout of this curriculum plan coming up with, there's certain content that's going to be covered. And at the end of that 6 weeks, at the end of that unit, those are all best practices that no one debates. So what you really have to consider is we need to be mindful and careful we're not over testing, because we do not need to punt, certainly at a secondary level, on common assessments, because that's telling us, is every student getting equal opportunity with the state managed curriculum? I mean, that's
Totally agree. So this is an excellent discussion. That's I want to reiterate one more time. I'm a proponent of designing goals that kids are not accepted to that. So whatever heads need to get together, how that looks, I don't plan to know how that works, but I feel like that's constant across the grade level. It's too much pressure. It's not that. That's not working. We need to figure out.
And if that means we need to get creative in how we create goals, then let's do it.
Yeah.
And put the heads at the table and all come together to try to figure it out, because I don't think anyone at this table wants kids over tested and the anxiety goes up, and then the STAR test becomes this huge ugly bear, and when really you're just testing, we should be using the STAR test to test what has been taught, because it's been a good and viable curriculum that's been taught all year in every class.
And that's why we put this form together. I made some blanks here for a second. That's the big deal. I'm glad you made that. Because that's something I think we're all concerned about. I made some so there's a couple of other things that I'd like to get some feedback on. These are you on. That would be board constraints and superintendent constraints. So looking at what you currently have. As far as board self-constraints, it's topics in closed session shall not be discussed outside of executive session. That was one. Do you think that's the issue you need to have a constraint over? No. Any concern there? Okay, I would agree with that. And then number 2 is the board shall not allow discussion outside of agenda items during the board meeting. Thing is, the board constraint, you're going to be reviewing in a few months, looking at it, so it kind of keeps it out of there.
Yeah.
I just want.
I don't think it's good because it holds us accountable.
Okay, number 3 is the board shall not allow less than 50% of their time in meetings to be spent on student outcomes. Keep that as a. And then number 4 is the board shall not allow a year to go by without holding a team building activity with 100% Maybe there's something funny. Everybody's done. They all good, that's a lot.
No,
Everybody.
We had two missing,
Oh, boy.
one's missing into that.
Did everybody go to each other? What about Victoria? Using Greece?
No, we didn't have everybody here.
So maybe two things, I kind of. They know, we'll remind them. Okay, so we have to indicate number 4. Now, so any other things that you feel like as a board that you would like to have a constraint, to kind of keep in front of you as a reminder to something that you feel like you can hold each other accountable for? Y'all are real good about attendance. I have some boards that not so good. So, we had a student discussion in one district recently about student attendance, about teacher attendance. They were all up on their soapbox. And then we got to talk about constraints, and I said, well, your own attendance is way below the teacher attendance. And they agreed. So we put together a strategy. Yours is really good. Can you think of anything else that you feel like?
give the, work constraint over like community involvement.
So
Maybe different, need to be a bit.
Maybe get some of those other.
okay.
Or it'll just keep on being stuff over the same thing, you know. It's the way it's modeled.
No, this is gonna be a different game. Okay, now let's look at superintendent constraints. So we've got the superintendent shall not fail to participate in a board team building activity attended by 100% of the candidate. So. It's the case.
Yeah.
Superintendent constraint 2 is the superintendent shall not allow the ADA to drop below 91%.
Dr. Mackey.
Is that still a good percentage to keep that, or?
Or do we need to go up?
Well, we're gonna, I predict that this year will come above it because of the waiver, so it was close. I'm excited, I would like to track it, because remember, we're adding the parent liaisons this year. And by the way, for clarification, these are not added positions to the local budget. These are through a federal pathway, so we're not adding a bunch of new positions, we don't do that. What we're doing is we're taking advantage of some other monies that are available to support attendance. Guess what? In the long run, they pay for themselves because we're funded through ADA currently, through ADA, and probably will be future. So I'd love to track that, and we can publish some really good data for you all now that we have.
And let me tell you what I can just reflect back on the year. August, September, October, November, we had 94%. Then we get into December and January, it dropped to 92.43. And then in March, February, March, it was 93%. And then in April and May, it was 92.4%. We were right at about 93 in spring. And higher than that in the fall. So your target was not to drop below. So do we want to change that target?
Saying we need to raise the bar.
Yeah. That's what I was suggesting. Just where? Where do you want to put it?
But what's like 90, what's reasonable?
I think to establish that goal, and it doesn't take long, but it needs to have a reasonable and measurable goal. I mean, we've got, and COVID was 3 years, right? It was a weird time for attendance, but we've got 10 years.
So why?
Oh, yeah. Indeed.
So why don't we just look at it, right, it brings it to figure out where we should be,
So then,
instead of trying to guess a number and.
Dropping the spring lead from all the extracurricular activities that are going on. Where my kid was involved with track or something and out, but they got absent, not absent.
Those days don't happen.
But I get the calls from the school, saying they're gone, they're absent. So,
Yeah,
So it's our system,
yeah,
right?
so now we have a new system and it's always better to err on the side of caution because I do know, as a parent have the same thing, but sometimes when your student did miss that 8th period class, we have found where the student was missing. And so I always think it's better to give the notification and then confirm that everything's in. Now, when we have a situation where what you're explaining here, that's an E, that's an extracurricular activity. So I would want to visit with the team who takes the attendance because we should be able to control it. If it's a coded E for extracurricular after a field trip, perhaps we, when I say perhaps, I want to look at that because those shouldn't be called, it should be an A or a U or for absent, unexcused, H for hospitals. Some of those definitely need to trigger the call, but that's a great point. If it's an E.
It was explained to me that it's the system itself, kids go out for extracurricular things. Something about the list transitioning from the organization to the attendance clerk, times and then all the things is lining up and all the things so now I feel like don't find out because I get that tons of unexcused that was last year and they started again.
It was, and I've heard that a lot. I mean, I've
So I think the system is supposed to be more user friendly for parents and so hopefully she'll complete this more.
I definitely feel that the new system. But we need this type of feedback so that we can ensure we can run tests. We can check with the parent. You know, if we know that one of your students is out on an extracurricular, look, we can code it as an E, but if you get the call, you know, maybe we can do some testing of the system to say, you know, we know the baseball game happened, did you the call? I think that would be helpful for us. And so I think if we put some very purposeful ways to measure that the new system is working and the way we're coding things and it automatically knows, because it should. That's a field trip, that's an extracurricular, that's not.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
We can talk about that. The third superintendent committee had to do with teacher retention. Dropping it below the turnover rate below 15%. So we're going to review that. That's coming up. This will actually look at that for the previous year. But do you think we can keep that retention rate?
If anything, refine it to, I think one of the things that should be measured and certainly celebrated is the recruitment and how well the recruiting went. That's a progress monitor. That's a progress measure that we can come to at any point and say, how are we doing? Where are we? And we get that from the start here. So
Yeah, that's why I had asked for that personnel report at that time to report on any good things that we do. None of our personnel department. Now, are there any other issues that you want to hold a guardrail for Dr. Macklin? That's what, you know, the strengths are of the guardrail. In the past, I haven't heard of our conversation before the meetings about it lately, but in the past, you were concerned about discipline. You could create a constraint about discipline. And the district that has one like that, and what they did is they looked at reducing the number of out of class placements. And so they, during the fall, they kept track of how many out of class placements they averaged per month. It was like 129 per month. And then, so that was their baseline. The idea was to drop that. Well, in the spring, they started, it was 89, then like 87, 83, 83. And so they actually did cut it down quite a bit on their out of class placements. They didn't do it. It was
For the little, and we were worried that you don't want to just have people stop referring to the
No.
you
No,
know.
that wasn't what they did at all. And I know that is a fear that you could,
have a negative impact.
Yeah, but what they did is they put a whole bunch of programs in place to improve this. And it seemed to have the right effect, talking with principals, police, with something that they did to improve the citizenship of the students.
I have some thoughts on that, because I think we could capture some data. I think just like STAR test, if the only measure of how you're doing a STAR, I mean, it's over by that point. You have to have a formative evaluation, and one of the things Chris and I have been working on, he's been working with the principals on this, a walkthrough data. That if we're gonna measure the reactive data, that's one thing, but if you're gonna measure proactive data, like for the rules published, is there a seating chart? Are the expectations? Are there supports needed? We can measure, were there coaching sessions? If we have someone who is struggling with classroom management, where's the documentation that we coach them, that they receive training on that and they receive support on that? So I just think there's a lot of data points, if that's something y'all are interested in, that we can say is, what's the causal factor? And as you know, I mentioned the number one causal factor is you gotta have your staff before the first day of school, which has been across Texas a gigantic constraint. And so now we already have the data to show that we're in between last year and this year. And then to provide quality support, training, mentoring as well. I know that Chris, if you want to mention, I know Chris has made a significant shift on the coaching piece. Academics is good, but he's made a huge shift towards mentoring. I don't know if you want to mention something about that. I know the staff you were talking about support for teachers, and that was going to be a big priority for you.
Yeah, one of the big focuses is going to be on the new teachers. One of the issues that we've had is, we've been bringing in staff mid-year, whatever it is. People coming in late and they're in the classroom, they haven't got the support that they needed, maybe they weren't fully trained. Alternative certification is awesome, and it's opportunities for us to get teachers, but they haven't gone through a formal program. So they haven't learned all of the strategies that they're supposed to. And so we've really fallen short with that in the past. So our instructional coaches, they're going to be focused, the core instructional facilitators for the district. Their job is going to be new teachers. That's all they're going to be doing, in-class support for them. And then we're going to follow up with that with the walkthrough data and have monthly meetings at the campus level on what we're seeing, not only with our new teachers, but all the teachers as APs and principals and me, instructional facilitators, instructional coaches, academic deans, to make sure that we have that dialogue to see where that support's going. Then each time that we have a district professional development day, or you'll notice like in the calendar, at the end of a grading cycle, we have a day where teachers can plan, or there may be PD or something like that. We're going to utilize 2 hours in that day for new teachers, further training. But that'll be based off of the walkthrough form data that we've developed in conjunction with the principals. Prescriptive, what's been going on in the classroom, what are the trends that we see, all of that data will be collected. And at each one of those meetings, we're going to talk about that, look at it. And then as we go through, we'll be formulating what this next new teacher session will look like. And so everybody's on the same page with this consistent coaching cycle. One person's not coming in and then another person's coming in and starting somewhere different, not having the same dialogue, same conversations. Everything's very fluid. That's the goal.
And also to mention collecting data and some of the things we've done. So there's level 1 behaviors. I didn't bring them next. And so we need that. And we had our, if you recall in the spring, I put in some of the newsletters, we were doing committee meetings with each campus on discipline. So we're working on these level 1, 2, and 3 events. So, a level 1 events is typically the thing that needs to be handled in the classroom as well. However, if they're pervasive and they're persistent, and the teachers doing their part, listen, I completely respect and appreciate positive reinforcement is the way to go. However, if that's not working, there does have to be accountability in that. I've seen great plans by teachers up in an elementary campuses where they have a log outside their classroom, and if pencils are the issue, or they're not having materials, they have a sign-out sheet. Here's my pencil, sign it out. If you don't, so I think the teachers are doing a great job of working through these level 1 behaviors. They need our support on level 2 and 3. Those are the more aggressive type behaviors. And I'll say it now, and I've said it at every staff meeting. Aggressive, violent behavior is 0 tolerance. There is no restorative practices for aggressive, violent behavior will not be tolerated. There's no place for it. and there's no excuse for it, and that's up to us as leadership to support the teachers. That does not happen. Again, I've said it before, I'm saying it now, that will not be tolerated.
So we have room for a couple more constraints. What I'm hearing is possibly one for discipline. And possibly one for something related to walkthroughs or new teacher training. Something like that. But what do you think, board?
Yeah, how do we wrap up all those things like walkthrough and training, I think, for one. Training, I think we can work that.
I think the GPMs, so if we, you know, we don't have GPMs for these per se.
Well,
We can sort of say, yes, strength progress measures to say, we're not just gonna look at referrals, because that's not, number one, that's not fair to the teachers, because the teachers they're providing so many interventions, what we call level 1 interventions as well, is that we need a way to document that. And when I say document, we'll be clear on this. Teachers are not to be documented ad nauseum. Not ad nauseum. We're talking about a system to where if you've made 3 parent contacts, confirm parent contacts. Confirm means, did I leave a message? Not confirm. Did I send an email? We don't know if that's even, you see what I'm saying? 3 confirmed contacts on these level 1 behaviors, and they're not, you know, we're not getting the support. That's going to automatically kick that up to a level 2 and 3 for added support. Not to say, well, oh, you know, because I know that can be an issue to where you're telling teachers we'll get more documentation. The teacher's primary role is to teach classes, not to document. And so all that we're asking in this new approach to the management plan, it is accountability, but we've got to include our parents, and our parents have to be a part of a confirmed conversation. That listen to little Johnny every day, you know, he's coming in and throwing paper in the classroom every single day. Contact 1, or you know, little Johnny is refusing to do their work. Contact 2, and then after that, confirmed contact 3. Even though it's a level 1 behavior, we are swarming to support that teacher, because that teacher has informed the parent to be an active partner in solving that. And it's time to move to the next level. And again, as we teach behaviors, and every campus has positive supports. This is not about a negative approach. We have had, you know, with that restorative practice, it's all about positive approaches, and that's a good place for it. The thing is, our teachers need to support it in knowing that and another thing is restorative practice. In the new philosophy, restorative practice occurs at the classroom level. That means the classroom teachers providing a positive reinforcement. And if the positive reinforcement and those interventions are not working, well, it's a different approach. And I think the teachers will appreciate that. So we can measure all of this.
Looking at my calendar here, and I found August 18th. Or this one, we're gonna be as a leadership team, and we're gonna draft this Friday. We're gonna draft these. I'm gonna bring a team over here. I'll have Lisa Moy with me, Debbie Taxman, and the 3 of us are gonna all do that meeting with the principals and talking up with the draft, and then we'll send it to you, for the September board meeting, so you have really a chance to look at it, digest it. If you have any concerns or questions, be back to Dr. Mack ahead of time.
Tony, I'd like to bring it to a way before board my newsletter as we start to frame these out. Here's an idea. Here's what we're thinking about. And so
We're not going to leave that day until we're done with it.
okay.
We'll have a whole template built. So we're gonna, in the morning, I'll only need the principals for a couple hours. And then we just will sit and work, and then I need to be able to have access to you during the day if I have questions. We're not gonna leave the building until it's done. And then I can share it with you that day. You can send it to them on the 18th of August. We don't have a board meeting in September. I think it's all around the 18th of September or something like that.
September 19th.
Yeah, 19th. So I tell you what, this was like the best discussion I think we've had in a long time. This was outstanding. Can't thank you enough. Are there any other comments I need to take note of?
Dr. Mack, how many walk-ins or to say is required?
There's no state requirement on it, right? And I think that is something we could also present, because remember what we talked about in those seating charts. Another key one is I bet you know about this one, a good substitute for folder is in the room, and that's a data, I believe that is Chris, we have that on there too, as a data. So we can bring the number of walkthroughs, and again, we can measure those proactive things along with, so we can present that data to.
Yeah, it's already
Using this morning, teachers, and they do a great job on that.
Yes, yeah, that's what I mean, I think in my other walk, it seemed like we had 100 walkers in one week. And sometimes it comes as a whole, it's really not that many, we just see that it's like, but in there, it's really in a whole, they call it a whole. And you have 5 or 6 people in your room at one time, and still trying to maintain the discipline and everything else. It's totally chaotic, but I wanted to ask, I mean.
And I also see those walkthroughs very differently than most people. Walkthrough is not a chance to judge. a
Okay.
teacher. It's a chance to coach and share ideas. I know I've had a walkthrough before when I was a campus principal, and a lesson was done horrifically. But the culture of my campus was, the teacher came over, she goes, "This is the most difficult thing that I teach. I wanted you to come when I'm struggling, so you can give me good feedback." That's the culture we need to design. Not I got you, but how can we solve this together? How can we figure this out? It's not a gotcha. It speaks to the opposite of teacher retention if we're using it as punitive. But if everyone sees it and puts their guard down, everyone involved, and say, "No, we're solving problems here, we're coaching each other." And you take the focus away, you should not focus on the teacher, you should focus on the students. And so that's going to be a new philosophy moving forward as well. No one should have anxiety when someone comes in the room. It's an opportunity for everyone there to get better, including administration. I know I learned more about content. I know ELA teachers, you know, I was a science teacher, you learn more about content because you can learn it. As long as you view it that way, it doesn't get, I got you.
And all of our new teachers, project leaders, coming in, they are assigned, a mentor assigned to them. So they're person.
I believe on the mentors, how they're assigned or how they'll be mentored.
Yeah, each campus assigns their own mentors because they know which ones are gonna go to.
And I believe that some of the conversation, at least I heard, is about matching the best mentor, not the person who may have been in the district the longest. It may not be a department chair. It's going to be matched based on the need and not anything else. It's not going to be a check the box. It's going to be a good match. I believe we talked about that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So next month, we're gonna be looking at CCMR, and then we'll have state results and state ratings. So that'll be able to get. Thank you very much. I want to tell you, it's a privilege to get to work with BCISD. I enjoy working with everyone.
Thank you. We appreciate you and all your work with us. All right, moving on to our consent agenda. I know there was a question about one of the items on the consent agenda. D, approval of the YMCA after school daycare agreement. Are we wanting to remove that, or is that the question's been answered and we're good to go moving forward?
But I still would like to, but I'd like to have a conversation about it. I don't think that we've actually had a conversation. And I went back and I looked, yes, Dr. Mack did put it in his reprint, but as a team, we have not addressed it, and I don't have a problem with YMCA. My sister runs the YMCA.
Do you want to take off consent?
Yes.
Okay. So we will take item D off of the group of consent and hear that alone. But is there a motion to be made on the consent agenda as written with the removal of item D? Okay, a motion has been made. Is there a second to the motion? There is a first and a second. Is there any questions or conversation that needs to happen around any item besides D? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, we will take item D by itself and then move on to our next item of business. So item D, approval of YMCA after school daycare agreement. We will take this by itself, so we need to go ahead and make a motion to approve this, and then if we need to go back, we can go back to table it if needed. Does that make sense? So there, to open up discussion, we need to be able, so we have a motion on the table to approve the YMCA daycare agreement. Is there a second to the motion? Okay, there's a first and a second. Now, are there any questions, comments that need to be addressed?
I have some comments that you might, this, when it's on this portion of the agenda, we're always ready to present. And so, I'll present and then entertain additional questions.
Perfect.
So, the process, coming forward to today with YMCA began in February. In February, we were approached by, community leaders, that there was a concern and a need for daycare, for our students. And so we met with those community leaders. The community leaders had some of the community leaders had a background with working with YMCA and asked us if we would explore it. So it was in no way, you know, we think this is the best thing in the world. It was brought to us as an idea and a concept. And so we had an initial meeting and we had an initial overview about some things I will cover. But I want to go through the timeline first. So after that initial meeting, we came back and we took a team for a site visit at Victoria. And Victoria is, and I'll go into some of the specific data. Victoria is all in on this model and how it helps students. And I'll get to all that. I just want to go through the time. So March, we came back and in April and reviewed the site visit and also discussed what the framework for an agreement would be look like, i.e. an MOU. And then so in May, we launched a survey. I know we was a part of that. Community leaders were a part of that. The survey was not sent to everyone. It was sent to the people who used the service. And so from that service, I'll report to you that when you talk about significant numbers, this is a survey in May. Surveys are already difficult to get a response, but we did a survey in May through this timeline of exploration, not jumping to conclusions. And we had 94 students interested. And so knowing that typically your response rate is lower on the survey, it always is. All I have is all the data. Every survey we have is we need more responses, but 94 students is beyond significant for that. So we moved forward and asked them to present us with an MOU at the May meeting. So then in June, put into the newsletter that framework for the MOU in June. I did get some feedback from the board. I know for sure there was a typo in there. And I want to say it had a Victoria acronym, but it had another district acronym. I think it was item 17. So we corrected that after receiving feedback from the board in June. And then July, put it in the newsletter again as corrected because we did make those corrections to item 17. As far as the rationale for the recommendation, this, of course, everyone's heard of the YMCA, but just to give you an idea, in the region that serves Victoria, and we say Victoria, you know, 12 of their 16 elementary schools, and that's where we went with size. And I believe we have at least 2 principals sitting here right now. Anna was there, Rosie was there, we did site visit, looked at how they run things, how they do things. We had an opportunity afterwards just to run through all of our questions. In subsequent subcommittee exploration committees, I think they're exciting 1 or 2 here at the House. Vince from finance went on the site visit, so there's been a lot of people in every meeting. We had community leadership representation going through it, and we felt there was a lot of positives here. We're talking about a program that the concept of the program began in 1978. And the concept of the program moving to schools has been there since 1992. So this is a very proven quality. This is a very well framed out lesson. I'll get into some more of the specifics in just a second. They serve, this will probably be a question, they serve currently pre-K through 5. Some discussions about potentially including the middle school. Like I said, Rosie was there, but their current program pre-K through 5th grade is where they focus. Other things I wanted to mention is in those meetings, the level of cooperation and commitment, and most of those are in the MOU. But right away, when we talk about some of the constraints, for instance, we're into We are into recruiting and retaining teachers. It is no mystery that it is very difficult for teachers to forfeit their classroom during the school year and turn their rooms upside down. If you want a teacher to stay after school and tutor, they need to have access to their room. If they're gonna come in on Monday, they need, not Monday, every day, they need to know that their classroom is in the same order. We respect and appreciate that. So right away, YMCA made it clear, and it is in the MOU, they will not be using classrooms. So one of the biggest constraints out there for our teachers and ensuring that we're retaining teachers, encouraging teachers, and not making overwork on them was cleared off the table immediately, and that they had no intention of using the classrooms. They are going to focus on common areas such as the gym, the cafeteria. Scott was involved, and they talked to Scott about evaluating facilities, and mainly it was sinks and restrooms, if I recall correctly. And all signs were go on that. It looked like and again, they had extreme flexibility. I remember some of the conversation was, well, can the restroom be outside of the cafeteria? Like, absolutely, just, there was this attitude of we're partners. It was this attitude. And so when we talk about, I just gave you one constraint. I said, when someone else is in their classroom, that's so difficult during the year. But then remember what I said, if you want a teacher to tutor after school, if you want that to happen, they need to have their classroom. Well, YMCA went a step further. YMCA said, if you need any child for tutoring with one of your teachers, we have a control sheet where you come in, you sign that student out, take them to your room, and then bring them back to us. We got you. We got you. We're going to cover it. We're responsible, but we will work with the campuses. If you sign that student out, and we have safety procedures to return the student as well, we will work with you. So it really appeared to be they're tripping over themselves to partner with us. And there's some others coming up, but just they also in their curriculum, when we talk about social emotional learning, they shared with us that a big part of their curriculum not only is, yes, they've got STEM activities. If you've done any research online, and I'll continue to give you more information. Yes, they have the STEM activity, but they also purposefully focus on values and citizenship. And as far as I go, the culture of excellence is academics, extracurricular activities, and model citizenship. So it fits with the vision of the culture of excellence, and that is part of their curriculum. And again, not a curriculum that's a fly by night. We're talking about an organization that's been in school since the 90s. 20 hours of specific training for their staff. Well-trained staff is important, and I'll talk about insurance as well. They also carry their own insurance. There's a lot of pluses here. Of course, the arts are a part of that as well. We talk about, yes, there's tutoring, yes, there's STEM, yes, there is opportunities for SEL, but they also have a focus on the arts as well. And we need arts in our school. That's a big part of what we do. We have a lot of success. I won't go into the financials, but obviously a group that's been around that long has substantial financials, and I can share it with you. It's YMCA, they're very stable. Then you get into this idea, all right, that's wonderful, we've got a great program, but finances are always an extreme. Well, they have their own partnerships, next level partnerships. First of all, YMCA has issued just in the last year 150 scholarships for underprivileged students to get a chance to participate, to the tune of I want to say $80,000, because it can be at different levels. They can go all the way, depending on the need. They can go all the way to a full scholarship to a partial. So the partial scholarship, full scholarship, using the same criteria we use. Same criteria we use. So if they need information, if we have a student who, remember that survey, that was just the first survey, who didn't answer because they were afraid about the money. We have the data to say this is a student in need, and the criteria that you use for a scholarship is the same criteria that we use for low SES. It's the same criteria. Even more, they partner with child care services through Workforce Solutions. So Workforce Solutions is associated with this very reputable program that's been around since 1992 in schools and 78 in general. And so they provide scholarships as well. So again, the partnerships, they have backing by more than just their own reputation. A few other stats that I have to share is across the coastal bend, they have 16 different sites. serving over 640 kids. I mean, it was apparent in the site visit. They know what they're doing. They're very, very well. The training is immense. I want to say, I was looking for the specifics on the training. I think I said it was 20 hours of specific training you had to have. Over 30 STEM activities in their curriculum that they can deliver on a daily basis, and even gives you the time. It's a 30-minute STEM activity. So we talk about curriculum being guaranteed and viable. This is not something that's just thrown out there. They have a time schedule for it, et cetera. Of those locations, they've been serving local schools for 28 years. So again, back to the reputation that they do good work. So they're increasing. And I believe Palacios is another district that has some improvement. So they're only growing, they're expanding. And I think it's a good opportunity for us. I want to touch on a couple of things specific in the MOU that were, I mean, they put it in print, you know, and it was good stuff. As far as available space on page 2, item number 9, not only do they acknowledge that they're going to use common areas, they acknowledge that they will get out of our way if we need it. And that's a true partner. One of the most really critical pieces here, item 10, costs. YMCA shall bear all costs associated with initiation and provision of the after-hours school program. YMCA shall specifically bear all costs associated with licensing, staffing, and operation of the program. Gigantic. I don't think polar opposite is a big enough word to what we're typically looking at there. It's usually a very costly piece to support a program like this. We're talking about $0 here. Does that mean I wouldn't come to you with a recommendation to support it in some way? I would have, in the past, we've provided some transportation before. All right, which campus is going to be on? We don't have that yet. We've got to get the kids to register first. Because why would you want to have on campus C if all the kids that want the service on campus A? So those are some of the logistics that are yet to be worked out. They're in charge of item 16 was another one I had starred. Recruiting, hiring, training, supervision, and compensation of staff for the after-school program shall be the sole responsibility of YMCA. And I can tell you they are going to be recruiting, and the number one focus on their recruiting efforts is to get a director from basic. That is their goal. They want someone from the community and someone from the area. Item 17, insurance. During the term of the agreement, YMCA shall maintain comprehensive general liability insurance in the amount of $2 million. So again, we have a reputable company dating back to the 70s and or 90s, depending on the school setup. They're insured, they're well trained, tremendous reputation. The effective date for the agreement, of course, is August, but we're not talking about launching it in August. We've got to get staff hired. There's a lot that has to be done. And in my opinion, the need is there and we need to get going. They also, item 19 is an offer to meet and negotiate the agreement. They're partners. They want to make sure the program is working. Item 21 just talks about those modifications and how they're approved. So if there's any questions about, you know, what are we getting into? No, they're open to negotiating, amending, and even allude to the process for those modifications being made and approved to meet our needs. And I mean, there's several of them here, and you know, if you want to look again at 28, there's more on the training, but that's the gist of it. But I'd be glad to try and entertain any additional questions you may have on the program. Again, it's in its infancy. We have the data of who's interested. Now it's mobilizing staff, it's getting schedules done, and not interrupting the lives of any campus that we don't have to. If those students are all located, the majority of the students are on one campus, that's where we're going to start. There's nothing here that is going to be haphazard or rushed.
This MOU does state in number 2, it says the following locations are that can be conducted after school programs during the above referenced dates or Cherry Elementary, Roberts Elementary, and Tenny Homes Elementary. So it is the potential to be at all 3 campuses. Obviously, it's a need-based thing. So I just wanted to make sure that that was brought to y'all's attention, that the intent is for every elementary campus, for it to be housed on that campus.
If we have the numbers, it would be best for kids that way. Especially the teacher can go in and pick up those kiddos and tutor them and bring them back.
And this conversation that we're having is the conversation I wish we had with about it. I did pull up the MOU, I did pull it up, but I went over it. Exactly what my questions were, the answer. I would like to be a part of the survey. I don't know if there's too much to ask when you send out surveys. I mean, just to let us know. I didn't know we were entertaining. I didn't. So,
We sent out a lot of surveys, during the school year. No, I'm just saying, I didn't know that it was a board expectation to surveys.
it may not be the entire board, maybe they are not interested, I know.
Sure. And additionally, with that being in the newsletter in June, just so we're on the same page moving forward, because, that's my fault. But anyone can ask me for a committee meeting, anyone can ask me for a meeting, a discussion. So that was something that I could have done a better job with. But if y'all will let me know from the newsletter that, hey, you know what, this is a hot button, I think we need to explore it in a different way, we'll certainly do a better job.
And I did-
Right, and I take,
that you did put it in the meeting.
right,
But, when I go through the board book, I'm looking at my points that we think is crucial. I didn't hit but I did today.
right.
I hit it and I saw exactly that you had sent out and those clicked on it, so I did see that. And I do understand some things that stood out to me was the space. That we have 3 schools to get with, or all schools, that I got that. The cost is my buying, because it's nothing, the expense is not on the BCISD. And everything you hit, like the date, when we're gonna start, it may not be in August, but we can't do anything until we have numbers. I got that one. And the meeting and discussion and the negotiating. Don't, if you send me a newsletter, I'm thinking about the main points. If you can somehow say, do it differently, maybe a different color button and say that this is that. But something as big as bringing in a program, 90 some kids, and I probably could go through the whole school district and pick out those 94 that answered those surveys. And that's a good number to come back. So I'm glad it's feedback into it. I'm glad we have the conversation. I'm glad you're able to pull up the data to support where we are. I just needed to hear.
And that's what's great about
Yeah.
the consent agenda and bringing things off is so that we can report that.
Yeah.
And also, I think I need to trim back some of the information in the newsletter so that some of those other things can be amplified. I know there's a lot of information in there. And like you said, there's a lot on it. That's an approach to transparency. But what I learned is from this, as far as even with the MOU, including some data along with the MOU would have been beneficial as well.
And I appreciate you considering.
Sure, I'm glad to do it.
Questions that I had when I talked to you earlier, you hit them, and also talked to Jill, and she told me about this. And I was like, okay, Felix, yeah, okay, well, then I need to go back on my board meetings and look and see exactly when you did. And I got today, she did send it, but it gave me an opportunity as the board member, that if it was to come up in the community, I don't want to be like, what? Things like that. I think that we should have open dialogue about and not be left.
And I think the team today, as long as we'll call a timeout and say, I know there's a lot of information, but I think it was like the 2 of us calling that timeout and saying, and I'd be glad.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that is part of the intent of the board briefing is if there are things in that board briefing that you have questions about, that's Dr. Mack, in my opinion, spending a lot of time creating that for us on a weekly basis to let us know, hey, at a high level, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm working on. And email questions back. There's a link on there, even type them in if you don't want to call them or email them separately. But I think that it's as much on us to be prepared and ask questions as it is on him to ensure the document is not the document, the information is in the board briefing. And the reason that we put it on consent was because it had been in board briefing for so many times. And yes, it's a big item. And I kept saying, has anybody said anything? Has anybody said anything? And he said there were a couple questions and a couple questions showed up in the board briefing. So I think it's a due diligence on all of our parts to look at the board briefing and go through it and click the links and do our part to do the back study, but also for Dr. Mack to continue to inform us. So thank you for the discussion. Are there any other questions or concerns? All right, hearing none, we have a motion that has been made. So hearing no more concerns or conversation, we will take a vote on the approval of the YMCA after school daycare agreement. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes 6-0. All right. Tony, did we need to take a vote on LSG this evening? Okay, so we did not do that. So is there a motion to be made to skip back up to LSG to approve our conversations and the documents for the next meeting? Okay, is there a motion? Is there a second to the motion? All right, there's a first and a second. There was one constraint, superintendent constraint that was not discussed. That is about, it says it shall not go a month shall not go by without the superintendent visiting each campus during a student activity or lunchtime. So I don't know the conversation, if you are still wanting to move forward with that, if the board thinks we need to do away with that one constraint.
I think we did that.
We had amended that.
Okay, that's what I thought, but wanted to double check on that.
Very
Okay.
good, thank you.
Yes, so if there is no other conversation or questions about LSG, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, on to the last item of business before we go into executive session, approval of employment handbook. I think this may have supposed to have been on consent agenda. It was in our thing. Is there anything that you would like to say on the approval of the employment handbook?
Yeah, it was a misplaced. It should have been under consent agenda.
Okay. Is there a motion to be made? Perfect. Is there a second to the motion? All right. Is there any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion passes 6-0. All right, we will move into executive session. Under personal matters, if necessary, may be taken into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duty, discipline, resignation, or dismissal of the public officer virtually, including contract recommendations for campus and district level administrators and teachers. It's 8:54, and we're gonna reconvene into open session to discuss and consider approval of hiring of contractual personnel. Is there a motion to be made?
Hiring the personnel.
All right, is there a second to the motion? There's a first and a second. Any discussion, questions, comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, motion passes 6-0. All right, next item of business is adjournment. Is there a motion to be made?
Yes.
All right, we have a first and we have a second, a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth. All right, is there any comments, questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye, opposed, motion passes 6-0, sorry, and we will adjourn at 8:54.